there has been announced that a Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot is a go over at Hulu. It will feature Sarah Michelle Gellar returning as Buffy, but she will not be, at least from everything that we've seen here, she will not be the main character, rather returning for a recurring role, as I'm sure they are going to crown a new Slayer and use her to pass the mantle, which actually fits here a little bit more than it does in some other instances, because they talk about it's literally right in the opening dialogue for the show where they say every generation has a Slayer. I'm sure generation was supposed to mean longer than like 25 years, but there's at least some precedent narratively that you could go ahead and do that. So let's go through the article first, and then I'll share my feelings on it. Because what I did, Mary, you understand, when we get something like this that I actually care like a lot about, I start furiously writing notes, and then they're really disjointed and out of place, and it's kind of like my brain just kind of vomits all over the page. But let's go through the article and get the facts down first.
So instead of Joss Whedon, they have sisters Nora Zuckerman and Lila Zuckerman writing the plot because Joss Whedon is a toxic jerk who creates a hostile work environment for his underlings.
The very first thing that people are going to have a problem with here is the lack of involvement from Joss Whedon. Yes, we understand that he is ostensibly canceled in Hollywood, and you cannot have Joss Whedon writing stuff these days. He hasn't done anything since like 2021, something that ran episodes until 2023. I even forget the name of the show. But as soon as all of this stuff came back out, he was persona non grata again. But the problem is the voice of this show is uniquely Joss Whedon, and he is one of those writers that, unfortunately for them, is gifted enough where they call it Whedonisms, and mimicking his writing is something that is not going to be taken kindly on by people that will smell a fake a mile away.
It's also a style of dialogue that is quite dated now.
So, but here's the thing. If he wants to bring it back and try to play on that, that's fine. But having somebody else try to mimic that when we're not in the Gen X... Well, one of the things that struck me the most about the show, it's... I know that Buffy, I believe, is technically a millennial, but it's the most Gen X show because they're just kind of left to their own... They're just children that are left to their own devices constantly. They're going to the Bronze nightclub on weekdays.
Yeah,
they're just hanging out in the school at 2 in the morning.
Thing? Like they're not in the UK, like in America, there are nightclubs for like high schoolers.
I mean, I don't know about during the week, but look, these are the credits of Nora Zucker of the sisters.
Yeah.
So Poker Face, which I did not watch, Prodigal Son. Okay, so here's the thing. They've got a good amount of TV credits here. They wrote episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., episodes of Suits, episodes of Haven, and they were staff writers on Fringe. And that's some credits, I suppose. But what's funny is Joss Whedon, prior to writing the Buffy TV show, wrote the Buffy movie, but he also did... He was one of the writers, along with John Lasseter and others, on the screenplay for the original Toy Story. So there's like already a level of excellence there that tells you how influential somebody like him was going to be with his talent, if only he didn't turn out to be such a crappy person for everybody. The first thing that I thought of, and I tweeted about this last night, so the very first scene in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, literally the first shot after they do the intro title card, is Darla sneaking into a school with this like wannabe bad boy. He used to go to this school, and they're sneaking in after hours, and she is very meek and seems to be led around by this guy who's causing her to make bad choices. You know, she's very shy. It then subverts you when she turns into the vampire who then kills him. That was subversive and a bit revolutionary in the year 1997. The problem is, in the year 2025, they're probably going to try and do the exact same thing again and pretend as if it's still subversive.
Well, they did it again, you could argue, in 2009 with Jennifer's Body.
Well, they do it a lot with his shows in general. I mean, whether we're talking about Dollhouse with Eliza Dushku, and even the creation of Angel with Cordelia, who Cordelia has perhaps my favorite character arc out of any character in the show.
You were suggesting a Cordelia spinoff instead of a Buffy reboot.
They should have done, well, no, even back then, maybe instead of putting her on Angel, and she is great on Angel, you make like a Mean Girls show, but it's starring Cordelia Chase.
What's the actress's name?
Charisma Carpenter. Great name.
Charisma Carpenter.
Great acting.
Great name. She should have had a supporting role in the actual Mean Girls, which came out a year after Buffy the Vampire Slayer went off the air.
Yeah, she should have. So the other thing that I'm weary about, so one of the things I love about the original series, they use really, really awesome facial prosthetics for the
I don't know if I would call them awesome. But I watched this show far more recently than you did. Because there was a wager set by the Crisis Actors to make me watch the first season.
It's not CGI.
I know. I don't think they're willing to do that today, but I didn't understand the appeal of it because I didn't grow up with it, and it has no nostalgia value for me.
Yes, in the chat, Moon at Noon, Firefly and Serenity are both Whedon properties as well. So the other person involved in this is Chloe Zhao. Chloe Zhao is going to direct the pilot. She, of course, directed the masterpiece Eternals from Marvel.
Does she have anything that you like?
I
looked through her credits
I didn't see Nomadland. I don't know her work other than the Marvels.
But at the same time, you could say that wasn't
not the Marvels, the Eternals.
You could say that the Eternals wasn't entirely her fault because directors of Marvel movies, especially on that level, don't have a lot of control.
Oh, I disagree. I mean, that movie was so different from the rest of the Marvel formula that I would argue that meant that she probably had way more control. Putting sex scenes in Marvel movies and making something so boring it felt like you swallowed a bottle of Valium isn't the traditional Marvel formula. The traditional Marvel formula is campy. It's fast-paced, high or low frame rate action to make it seem faster. Like, it's great. But that's not what that movie was. That movie was a mess. But look, you can't. They're going to do the strong woman thing, right? That's fine. But the thing is you can't treat it as revolutionary or subversive anymore. It has to be done as a matter of course. You can't do it as if you're, breaking the mold like they did back in 1997.
Well, most of the takes that I've seen so far, which are skeptical of their ability to do this the right way, are not mentioning those tropes. They're actually coming up with a much different reason. They're worried about Buffy being set up with a love interest. They're worried about the format of the show being ruined because it's not being aired on television.
Yes, so that's a big part of it, right? As we know, is that they're going to want to do a limited run. First of all, Sarah Michelle Gellar's not going to want to come back for 22 episodes.
No.
She's older now. She's probably got better things to do.
She's a mom.
She just did Dexter Original Sin, and she's in like 6 episodes of that or something like that. She doesn't need to come back for 22 episodes a year. I would love that. I would love for them to go back to the 22 episode formula. No. I don't want a freaking limited series.
They said, just realized it's 2025, so that means the Buffy revival will have 7 episodes and a new season every 3 years.
Yeah, and the problem is if the new Slayer is supposed to be like a freshman in high school, right? You can't come back 3 years later and suddenly she's Millie Bobby Brown and 20 years older.
Yeah, and the remaining question is who will be that person? Like, who can play that person that
you
takes
can't,
the mantle?
You can't really bring back Spike or Angel because they're vampires, and David Boreanaz and James Marsters aren't in their 30s anymore. They're in their 60s now. They don't look like they did. No. They're certainly not ageless. I guess you could write a way to bring them back in where they've been turned human. But even then, that's such a break from the formula that nobody's going to want that.
No, but who is going to play the next Slayer?
Oh, I don't know. That's if they really wanted to subvert, they'd make it a guy.
That's true.
If they really wanted to be subversive, they would make it a guy. Make him gay. If you must be Hollywood, you can make him gay.
Oh, no. We have a 20 from Pop Culture Junkie. Whedon's final show was The Nevers, a sci-fi drama that had a first season that was actually quite good. Very steampunk. The second season was shot but never aired. Another David Zaslav tax write-off with the Roadrunner movie.
Yeah, that's after the resurfacing of all the allegations against him, they just canceled it, from what I remember. Yes.
Well, Do you think they're just gonna get Jenna Ortega to do it because that's the obvious choice?
Yeah. For Buffy, like the
Yeah.
low
They're
episode
just having her
commitments.
do everything now.
Everything, yeah.
That's anything like this. If it has anything to do with like witches, vampires, monsters, or
I saw
whatever.
Buffy Summers as so. One of the things about Buffy Summers is that she, but people are like making fun because it's the gay guy. They would totally make him the Slay, or they would
Slay Queen. The gay
I'm
vampire slayer.
I'm
who's
just
like,
saying. I don't
"Slay."
think they did it with Willow and stuff too, right? Like I don't think that they would like if they really wanted to be subversive. A straight white male Buffy vampire slayer would be
We have
hilarious.
another 20 from Not So Secretly Based. Got to say it. I love my suitcase.
Suitcase.
Me too.
So the point being that what the thing about Buffy was a traditionally attractive girl who hung with Cordelia at first and could have been part of the cool girls club, but was nice to Willow.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think Jenna Ortega is not an unattractive person, but she's not coded as high school mean girl.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
She has like a Katie Heron.
Yeah, she
archetype.
is not coded the way that Buffy was coded and then broke the mold on. Again, another interesting case in point is what are they going to do with the character? Will they bring back other actors in the show? Like, how do you do Xander in the year 2025? So one of the things I thought was funny about it, again, I decided to rewatch the first 3 episodes last night. One of the things is Xander is obviously he has no powers. He's kind of wimpy, but he gets his moment in episode 2 where his friend Jesse has been taken by vampires, and even though he knows it's a horrible idea, he goes with Buffy to save him, which, allows you to see him in the light beyond just being the butt of the joke. Mm-hmm. How do they do that? I don't think that they have the deftness and the writing to do that in the year 2025. I think they would hammer it home. They would hammer it over the top of your head that he has to be some archetype.
You're extremely overestimating how much they're going to be focusing on the original cast rather than a replacement cast.
I would love to see them at least bring. No, I'm saying like as far as like an archetype for who will be his replacement in the next one. So they'll probably have an archetype of someone like him in this.
But they don't really need to.
It would be good
They
if
don't
they
need
did.
to just paint by numbers what the original was, right? If you're reviving it, you should have new characters. They're not just going to pick a new vampire slayer who has the same personality as Buffy. That would be stupid.
Yeah. So I guess I just the episode length is a real problem. One of the things
I
is
want to know your take on this, though.
on what?
There's no Buffy take I hate more than Spike or Angel being her end game. Buffy ends the show and comics without a romantic interest and even has a whole monologue about it and turns to friends for community. That's one of the key messages of the show. Let it be that. Do you agree?
I don't think they'll come back to it in this. I think like Buffy and Angel was a great through line when they're younger, or when she's younger. Technically, he doesn't age.
Oh, right.
Right? Like that's a great story early on. I never liked, for instance, I was never a fan of Darla and Angel as a storyline. I hated the flashbacks in Angel. I thought that they slowed down the plotting of the show. But to the point there, 22 episodes did them a huge favor. If you go on IMDb and you look up Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there is just pages of trivia. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking pages of trivia on every single episode. It built this fan base because the lore was so deep and there was just this amazing breadth of material to look at. And if you turned it into a limited series, it doesn't stand out anymore. It'll be just like every other show that gets brought back. They brought back Leverage as a series. Leverage is that show with Timothy Hutton, which they didn't bring him back for the revival. And they had to, and they couldn't get Aldous Hodge back, so they had to pass the mantle to his sister that you never hear about. And stuff like that. And passing the mantle in general, even if it does make sense in this story, doesn't sound fun. All it sounds like is corporate slop. They're like, here's this IP we own. We have to turn it into something. We paid $8 gazillion for 20th Century Fox. Why let it sit on the shelf? And that's going to be in the back of the mind. The people who love this show do pay attention to that stuff. They are the ones who look at your trivia section. They are the ones who pay attention to the comings and goings of these types of shows. It won't have the critical success that the original one did because the original version of the series had both diehard fans and broad appeal because it was a show on network television back in the 90s, which means that just more people in general were all tuned into one place. This is just going to fall by the wayside, and it won't have any of the magic that the original one had before. And all of this discussion doesn't really matter because that was true the moment that Joss Whedon wasn't involved, unfortunately. Sad that he had to be such a weirdo.
I don't even know if he was a weirdo or if he was just being mean to people because he needed to get a job done.
I know that the big statement is like he was never allowed alone in a room with Michelle Trachtenberg.
Yeah, because he would be mean.
Yell at her and stuff like that.
So what? Like a big whoop. I've heard way worse things about things that go on in Hollywood than that he's a big meanie. But aside from that, the only part of this that surprises me is that they didn't do it sooner, because they're bringing everything back. Even things that I watched when I was a kid are getting rebooted before Buffy gets rebooted. That's a strange life cycle for IP.
This was a really interesting one. So there was like a 2019 reboot of this announced where that they were going to race swap Buffy. And it was the first time that like millennials who yelled at Gen Xers for caring about race swaps had a taste of their own medicine. Where they were like, there were articles written by like mainstream publications like, why would you do that? Why would you race swap Buffy? That doesn't make any sense.
Wait a minute.
Written by ostensibly the same people who would tell Gen Xers like, why do you care that your favorite character is being race
is
swapped?
Buffy more of a millennial thing or a Gen X thing?
I saw people arguing on
is
about
Sarah
that.
Michelle Gellar Gen X?
I would imagine
think she's Gen X.
I imagine she is, but I imagine that her like the stuff that she was in, like if I think about I Know What You Did Last Summer or Cruel Intentions, those were movies from my early teens and childhood. So
yeah,
I was 11 when I Know What You Did Last Summer came out, and so I would have been 13 when Cruel Intentions came out. So those were parts of my childhood, and I'm an older millennial on the cusp of Gen X.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there just isn't the laissez-faire, go out till the streetlights come on mentality that existed. I don't want to see helicopter parents in the Buffy universe. I want to see hippie mom summers. And
do you think they're gonna set it? I don't know how they
current
can.
year. They have to set it in current year if she's passing the mantle.
Yeah.
So
you're gonna have smartphones in the Buffy universe, and that just sucks.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.